My name is Alex. I've spent 20 years installing specialized glass. From museum exhibits to high-altitude observatories, when the contract came in for the Tides End Lighthouse, I jumped at it. It wasn't the money, it was the location. Tides End sits 3 miles off the coast of New Brunswick, notorious for its brutal isolation and a maritime history that chills you even on a sunny day. The official story was that a freak weather event had caused an internal pressure anomaly that shattered the entire array of curved, expensive glass panels in the lantern room. They had been boarded up for months, and our foreman crew, myself, foreman David, and 2 laborers, Mike and Steve, were tasked with the replacement. It was a massive, dangerous job requiring precision rigging for the heavy, curved panels. The first day was pure labor. The air in the tower smelled of brine, old copper, and that damp, suffocating coldness only ancient stone can produce. By the end of the day, we had stripped the metal framework bare, leaving only the central Fresnel lens standing exposed against the sky. We retreated to the keeper's cottage below, exhausted. Day 2 was installation. We worked slowly, bolting the enormous new panels into their frames. Each one had to be perfectly aligned and sealed. We used special industrial sealant, filling every gap, making the lantern room genuinely airtight. We left the room spotless, wiping down every surface and double-checking the seals. When David, our foreman, secured the heavy steel door below the lens and clicked the padlock shut, he boasted, "Nothing but air is getting in there now, boys." Not even a microbe. We climbed down, feeling the satisfaction of a tough job done right. Then, David stopped halfway down the main spiral staircase. He looked back up at the tower glass, shading his eyes. He said something under his breath and started climbing back up. Mike grumbled, but we followed. When we reached the watch deck, David pointed through the glass of the steel door toward the far side of the lens room, at the northeast-facing panel. It took me a second to see it. High on the pristine glass, about 5 feet up, was a small, faint smudge. It was indistinct, maybe 3 inches wide, but undeniably the print of a 4-fingered hand. My blood ran instantly cold. "David, what is that?" "I don't know," he hissed, his usual confidence gone. "We sealed it. We checked. It's on the inside." The 4 of us stared in confusion. It wasn't moisture. It was a definite greasy residue, like someone had pressed a damp, oily palm against the inside surface. It was at a height suitable for a young child, or perhaps someone kneeling. But we had been the only people in the room for 48 hours, and the room had been locked. Mike suggested it was a joke, a smudge from the factory, but the pattern was too distinct. It looked fresh. We had no choice. We spent the next 2 hours rigging the crane, unbolting the massive panel, and carefully pulling it back. We thoroughly cleaned the inner surface with industrial solvent, making it clinically spotless. I personally ran my hand over the exact spot where the print had been. The metal framing was dry, and the area behind the lens housing was empty. We resealed the panel, added a secondary lock to the maintenance hatch, and retreated. Spooked, but determined to rationalize it as extreme condensation or residual oil from the metalwork. That night, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Day 3 was meant to be quick, just final inspection and log entries. When we reached the watch deck, my chest seized up. David didn't even have to point. On the same northeast panel, the print was back, but it was different. It wasn't a smudge this time. It was a dark, distinct impression, as if the hand had been covered in fine black silt or ash. It was pressed so hard that the glass around the edges looked slightly warped in the early morning light. And it was slightly higher than before, now almost at a fully standing height. We were horrified. We were the only ones on the island. The glass was brand new, perfectly sealed. The locks were untouched. "We leave it," David declared, his voice shaking. "We logged the job as complete, and we leave right now." But as we began gathering our tools, Steve, one of the laborers, let out a choked sound. He was staring at the glass, and he pointed a shaking finger at the center of the handprint. Where the handprint was darkest, a tiny, almost invisible streak of moisture was running down the inside of the glass, and beneath it, pressed right up against the inner curve of the glass, was a single, tiny, white limpet shell. David looked at me, his eyes wide and vacant. We both knew limpet shells didn't exist 100 feet above the high tide line. And they certainly didn't exist inside a factory-sealed glass panel. We ran. We packed the boat in a frenzy, leaving the remaining logs and tools behind. As the boat pulled away from the rock, I glanced back up at the tower. The sun was high, and the new glass shone blindingly. But on that northeast panel, through the magnified glare, I could swear I saw a faint shadow shifting behind the glass, like someone had momentarily stepped away from the impression and was now just staring out at the sea. I never did glasswork again, but I still checked the maritime news. 6 months later, the Foundation hired a specialist to investigate the Tides End glazing anomaly. The report, which was pulled almost immediately, said the specialist found only 2 things: the perfectly sealed panels, and, on the top floor maintenance platform, a single rusty child's brass buckle, identical to those used on old sailor jackets. And then, the chilling postscript. A subsequent log entry claimed the northeast glass panel had failed again. But this time, the entire sheet had been cleanly pushed out into the sea, leaving a gaping black void in the tower's light. They never found the glass, or what was strong enough to break the seal from the inside.